Hello, I'm Gordon Lang, editor of CameraLabs.com. I'd like to give you a brief video tour around the Canon EOS 40D. Here it is, the 40D. It's Canon's latest digital SLR that's targeted at semi-professional photographers or high-end enthusiasts. Now, depending on where you're based in the world, this camera is available in a variety of different lens bundles or as a body alone. I've got it mounted here with a Canon EF 24-105mm lens. Now that's not actually one of the official kit lens options, but it's a great model to go for if you're after real quality zoom to go with this body. Now the 40D from the outside very much resembles its predecessor, the 30D. Both are very tough cameras that feel absolutely fantastic in your hands. However, the 40D of course features many enhancements. Most obviously, it features an increase in resolution from 8 to 10 megapixels. It also has faster continuous shooting. Now the 30D was no slouch, shooting at 5 frames a second, but the 40D trumps that by shooting at 6.5, and here's what it sounds like. That's pretty quick, and if you're familiar with the 30D, you'll also notice that the actual shutter release sound of the 40D is different. Let's have another listen to that. There are also some options to quieten that if you like, which is a really neat facility on the 40D. Now the screen round the back has also been increased from 2.5 to 3 inches, and perhaps most exciting of all, it now allows you to use the camera in a live view mode. That means you can actually compose using the main colour screen on the back, and that's a really neat feature to have with several benefits over the optical viewfinder. We've got a graded demonstration of that coming up in just a moment. Now let's have a look at the 40D's controls. You've got the shutter release button here, a finger dowel here, and most of the upper right surface is dominated by this secondary LCD status screen here. If I press this button in the corner, you can also backlight it orange. Now one of the really important differences between this screen and the one in the 30D is this number down here, 400 ISO. That's right, Canon is finally showing the ISO sensitivity at all times, both on this screen and in the viewfinder, so that's a really nice enhancement over the 30D. Thanks for that, Canon. If we turn the camera around and have a look at the compact flash compartment, you can also see one of the other enhancements of the 40D. This thin rubber strip here means that the 40D has got improved weather sealing compared to its predecessor. And you'll also see something similar if you open up the battery compartment underneath the camera and have a look at this door. Again, a rubber piece here and around the perimeter of the door here. It all helps weather seal this camera. Now if we have a look at the back of the camera, you can see that like the 30D and the 5D, it's dominated by this big thumb wheel here that's used to go through the different menu options and also adjust things like the aperture and the exposure compensation. Now you'll notice that this menu system is no longer one long row like it was on the 30D and the 5D. Instead it has a tabbed approach, and you can use the finger dial to actually go between these tabs. And then once you reach the page that you want, simply use the thumb dial to actually choose the option. Alternatively, you can use this joystick here to move up and down or left and right within these menus. Going back to the top of the camera, it's worth having a closer look at the hot shoe here. It's surrounded by some plastic, and that is actually for use with the speed lights like the 580EX2. Now if you mount that speed light on top of the 40D, you'll have additional weather sealing here. The speed light shoe actually fits right over this edge for a very snug fit. On the top left side we've got the command dial, and finally if we have a look down the left hand side of the body, here are the actual ports behind some big rubber flaps. If you open them up here, you can see a PC sync port here for external lighting, one for a cable release, and on the right hand side we've got the traditional TV output and also a USB output for connecting to your PC. We're going to look at more of that in just a moment. One of the big new features on the 40D is live view, but it's not actually enabled as standard. You have to go into this menu and enable it if you'd like to use the facility. But from now on, when you press the set button on the back of the camera, live view will begin. So let's try that in practice. The sound you heard there was of the mirror flipping up to expose the main sensor, and this is actually a live view of what's in front of the 40D right now. And you'll notice that the image isn't actually in sharp focus. Now it is possible to autofocus in live view mode, but it's another option that you'll need to enable in one of the menus. We've already done that, so that when we press the AF on button at the back of the camera, you'll hear the mirror adjust in order to enable the autofocus to activate, and then the mirror to flip back up again to continue live view. So like most live view systems, it takes a couple of seconds, it makes a little bit of noise, but at least you can autofocus. Like other live view systems, you can also overlay various graphics on the screen. We've already put a grid, which is one of the menu options, but by pressing the info button underneath the screen, you can overlay some shooting information. Press it once more, you get some more in the bottom left, and once again, you get a live histogram in the top right corner. Now, one of the neat things about live view is the manual focus assist mode, and to show you that in practice, I'm going to move this white rectangle just over this microprocessor in the top of the image. Now we can actually zoom in on that for a closer look, and you can see that's not in sharp focus. Let's zoom in another step. This is actually at 10 times magnification, and now by turning the manual focusing ring on the lens, we can get this nice and sharp. So let's see, that's just about spot on. One of the neatest things about the software supplied with the 40D is the opportunity to remote control it using your PC. Now what you'll see here is an opportunity to change various settings, not the ones that are physically operated on the 40D. For example, the exposure mode here, in aperture priority mode, you're going to have to physically turn the dial if you want to adjust that setting. But for things like the aperture, simply click that and adjust that as desired. Similarly for the ISO, the metering mode, even the white balance and the quality setting. These can all be adjusted electronically, and then when you're ready to take the picture, just press this big button here in the top right corner, and you've got your picture, which is automatically transferred into the digital photo professional software that comes with the 40D. Now you'll notice up here, this large number here, 9999, that means that we've got an awful lot of hard disk space left on this computer for recording images on, so you're certainly not short of any space. The pictures are actually recorded directly to your PC, although you can also record them to the camera's memory card if you prefer. One of the really neat options is down here, indicated by the timer icon. This actually lets you use your PC as an intervalometer, taking a picture at specific intervals for a certain number of shots. This is great for doing those time-lapse shots of, say, a flower opening. But perhaps the most impressive feature of all ties in with the 40D's live view features. If we have a look at the bottom of this control panel here, you'll see a live view option. And if you click that, and I zoom the camera out to show you a bit more of the PC's screen, this is actually a view of what the 40D is actually seeing right now. Here is a live view of what the camera is pointing at. And we can view a histogram on the right hand side. This is a brightness histogram, or we can switch this to an RGB histogram. What makes this really exciting though is you can actually manually focus the camera again using your PC, and you can drag this window here to the area that you want to manually focus on. We're going to choose this top left corner right here, choose to magnify that, and here is a magnified view again in live view, but here are some focusing controls on the right. And if I click that, you can see the picture going out of focus, and then if I click it to the right, you can see it gradually going back into focus again. So this is a very, very powerful feature to have at your disposal. The Canon EOS 40D is a great camera to use in practice. It feels incredibly tough and handles extremely quickly. Whether you're auto-focusing on a fast-moving subject or grabbing the action with 6.5 frames of continuous shooting, you get the impression that there's very little that this camera can't actually handle. The metering is also very accurate, and if you head on over to the sample images gallery at cameralabs.com, you'll see that the final image quality is also very good. Now, the live view facility may be shunned by some traditional DSLR photographers, but we actually found it very, very useful in practice, and when you've got the screen zoomed in to 10 times, you really can accurately manually focus with it. But where it really comes into its own is when you're remote controlling this camera with the PC software suite. That's a really neat feature to have. So what is actually wrong with the EOS 40D? Well, very little that we can complain about. I mean, if you're having a look at the images very, very closely, perhaps they could have a little bit of extra sharpening applied to them, but that's something that you can easily adjust within the camera or just shoot in RAW for the best results. Perhaps the biggest problem for the 40D though are its latest rivals, the Sony a700 and the Nikon D300. Now both of those cameras have got features that the 40D doesn't have. For example, both of them feature HDMI ports for connecting to an HD TV. They also feature 3-inch screens but with 4 times the resolution. They have VGA screens and they both look really very, very nice. So really it's a case of weighing up pros and cons between these 3 cameras. But certainly if you end up really liking the look and feel of the 40D, you're not going to be disappointed with it. It's an absolutely fantastic camera to use. Once again, to see those sample images from this camera, along with how it measures up compared to some other bodies, for example its predecessor, and the full frame 5D, how are its noise levels, you can find out by heading over to cameralabs.com. There we've got our full review of the Canon EOS 40D.